it.
All right, great. All right, so these players are ready. This is round 6 of 9. Jim is to your left with goblins, Ben on the right with elves, and they're going to start playing. So let's go.
All right. Jim is going to be, it looks like Jim's on the play. It's going to be pretty helpful here. He's
right.
on 6 cards. He doesn't have the Mountain Turn 1, but he does lead off on Ethervile.
All right, so Ethervile is definitely a good start here. Let's see what Ben has. I see a Crater Hoof Behemoth in hand.
Yeah, so he has the Behemoth already in his hand, but he's going to lead off on what's probably the best turn 1 for elves. He's going to lead off on Forest, Fetch Land, sacking Forest, and then playing Llanowar Elves. You always have to be aware, you know, Forest Llanowar Elves seems inconspicuous, but elf decks can really just go to town oftentimes off this draw.
Definitely. Now, is Ben looking for a certain turn 2 or just a couple more creatures in play, a couple more mana ramp? Elves would be fine?
He just needs a combo piece. It depends. Sometimes if he doesn't have the combo piece, he can just draw. He can play Elvish Visionaries and Wirewood Symbiotes with them to draw a lot of cards. I mean, ideally, he would next turn, or even the next turn, play Glimpse of Nature and start casting a bunch of elves, Nettle Sentinels, and Heritage Druids. It is possible for him to go off turn 2.
Okay, and now Jim does have his Rashad and Port, so I wouldn't be surprised if he just kind of, locks down that forest while Aethervile gets more and more counters.
To buy himself some time.
Yeah, exactly.
Jim's going to play Arid Mesa this turn, sacrifice it to get a mountain. That will turn on his Rashad and Port. He put the Aethervile up to 1 this turn as well.
Yeah, now Elves definitely got a really big boost with the new Legend rule change because of Gaia's Cradle. They could tap Gaia's Cradle, get 5 or 6 mana, play a new Gaia's Cradle, tap that one for 5 or 6 mana, and just, make a lot of mana.
All right, it looks like he's debating between getting Plateau and Taigo. So there are some splashes in this Goblin's deck. What are the different colors for?
Well, basically for game 1, the only thing the green mana is really for is for the 10th Street Hooligan. If you cast 10th Street Hooligan paying green, you're able to blow up an artifact. Right. And then after board, he has the white because he has Thalia.
Okay, so game 1, though, it's just red.
Exactly.
All right, he's going to make the play you mentioned here. He's going to go ahead and port the Forest during the upkeep. That will pretty much take all the turn 2s off the table for Ben.
Okay, so now normally Elves, on their good draws, will win on turn 3 or turn 4?
Yeah, I would say Elves is normally a turn... If you don't disrupt it, Elves is generally a turn 3 deck.
Okay. But there is a lot of disruption in the format, even something as cheap as Daze, Spell Pierce, Thoughtseize, Source of Plowshare, Lightning Bolt, whatnot.
Yeah, so you see here, the Llanowar Elves makes Heritage Druid, then Gaia's Cradle comes down and makes a pair of Nettle Sentinels, which then makes Viridian Shaman blowing up the Aethervile. This is a
pretty good turn.
Pretty good turn. It's pretty scary here. Ben has in his hand the Wirewood Symbiote and Craterhoof Behemoth. So that Viridian Shaman untapped both Nettle Sentinels, which then retapped with them for 3 green to make Wirewood Symbiote. He has 2 green floating at the moment.
But he can't do anything else, right?
He can untap a creature. He could bounce. If there was another artifact in play from Jim, he could blow that one up too. He could bounce the Viridian Shaman, untapping Llanowar, making 3 recasting. There's no artifact. There's nothing really for him to do here.
Okay. So, I mean, is Jim just going to die next turn or the turn after?
Well, I mean, there's the problem right now that Ben actually has 9 power worth of creatures on the battlefield.
Yeah, so he doesn't even need the Craterhoof Behemoth.
Probably not.
I mean, it would help. It would be nice, but...
Well, he'll be able to cast it. He has 6 mana off that Gaia's Cradle, and he has 3 more from the Nettle Sentinel Heritage Druid interaction. So he can cast Craterhoof next turn for the win.
Okay. Well, it looks like he's untapping. I think maybe it'd be some...
Yeah.
The only problem is that Jim does have the Rashad and Port, so he could actually port the Cradle on upkeep, right?
Port the Cradle on upkeep, and in that case, Ben will just have to attack. Remember, with Elves, the Nettle Sentinels will be able to untap whenever Ben wants them to because of the Wirewood Symbiote. He can just bounce an elf and recast to untap the Nettle Sentinels that don't normally untap.
Okay. All right. So, is there any card that Jim could draw here to get out of this bad situation?
That's gonna be tough. Does he play a
Goblin
main deck?
Matron.
Does he have like Sharpshooter main deck? That card's pretty good.
Yeah, he does have 1 Goblin Sharpshooter main deck, but is it just gonna be too slow?
Well, if he can port, if he had the Aethervile, I'd say he'd have a chance.
Okay.
I mean, if the Craterhoof weren't in Ben's hand, then it's possible that Sharpshooter would be good enough here.
Yeah, but now if he actually taps out for a Matron or a Sharpshooter, Ben will
die.
Yeah, he'll just be down in the backswing. All right, so this just shows the power of Elves. I know Chris Anderson is a big fan of Elves, plays a lot of it. I know some Elf list plays a few cards different. Ben is playing the Bayou for the Black Splash. Is there anything that Ben's playing that maybe, say, Chris Anderson wasn't playing, or is everything kind of the same?
Well, I'm not entirely familiar with Chris Anderson's build. Okay. I know that the Craterhoof Behemoth has become pretty widely adopted. I don't know if anyone's still on the Mirror Entity plan anymore.
Yeah. All right, so Ben just shows him the
Shows
greater hoof, yeah,
yeah.
and that's it. All right, so Jim, well, I mean, Jim knows that Ben's got a great draw. Nothing he could really do. Jim mulligan. His hand was okay. Turn 1 Aether Vial, right?
Right, he had the turn 1 Aether Vial. There aren't too many cards that Goblins has game 1, I think, that interact with Elves at that point. Goblin Sharpshooter is the best one,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's, he needs something like a Skirk Prospector to accelerate into a Sharpshooter. It's really tough for him to have something to compete with that turn 3 win.
Okay, yeah, definitely something really interesting. All right, so what we're going to do now on screen, we're going to try to bring up Jim's sideboard if we could. If not, we could at least bring up this interesting card, all right?
Yeah.
We talked about it before. Matthias, why don't you tell us a little...
Confusion in the ranks.
Confusion in the ranks, all right? So we have Thalia in his sideboard. He's not bringing that in.
No.
Relic, he's not bringing that in. Mindbreak Track, Mindbreak Trap, no.
So I'm
He
not
wants that against
positive
Storm.
this is for this matchup, but it's an excellent card.
Let's take a look.
It's a rare from Mirrodin. Basically, what it happens is that if you play a creature, artifact, or enchantment, this is for all players. When you play it, you don't get what you play. You trade it for something the other guy had. That's the same type.
So is this really good against like Sneak and Show? Is that when you want to bring this in, maybe?
My guess is that this is against Sneak and Show. When they play
Exactly.
Show and Tell, you get what the other guy brought to Show
That's
and Tell.
pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Jim Davis, maybe a couple months ago, he was playing a couple of copies of Angel of Despair.
Yeah, so Angel of Despair or Ashen Rider now has been an upgrade.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
As often the card you see as like the uncastable thing in the sideboard of Goblins. I think what Jim's done is he's actually played a card that is in theory castable out of his own deck, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah, and he actually could kind of ramp to it with Skirk Prospector. A lot of people forget about Skirk Prospector. That card's really good. That card works very, very well with Goblin Sharpshooter as well. So it's pretty interesting. I love Confusion in the ranks. So
yeah, I wish we could see it in action. We're not going to get to see that. Obviously, this is not a show and tell matchup.
Sure.
But yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I'd
right.
like to see it play out.
So is Ben going to bring in anything besides the obvious Abrupt Decay?
Well, so you're saying he'd bring in
Abrupt. I'm pretty sure he wants Abrupt Decay in this match. If he wants to make sure that Sharpshooter doesn't stay around. Anything else?
I'm not even positive he brings in Abrupt Decay.
You don't think so? No?
Not really. This is a great matchup for him. I think he will bring in his last natural order. One thing is that when Goblins is pyrokinesising you, you can help to just Progenitus them or Crater Hoof them. So you might bring in like the Progenitus and natural order.
Okay, that's fair.
That's a good way to get around the fact that your opponent now has a lot more removal.
Okay. All right. Now, do you think I think you were saying this before. You were saying you think Elves is favored against Goblins?
I mean, most combo decks are favored against Goblins.
Yeah.
I do like Goblins. It still does have a game against combo decks, but it gets most of its game out of the sideboard. I think it's a lot closer now, for sure. Those Pyrokinesises are just excellent here.
Okay.
But I would still say, maybe not in an individual game, but over the course of 2 games, I think odds are that Elves takes one of the 2.
Sure. Now, Jim does have access to 4 Thalias in his sideboard to kind of help against combo. Unfortunately, this is not the combo deck that Thalia is really going to shine.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Elves plays 29 creatures in the main, and it only plays 11 spells. And as you saw there, he didn't play a single non-creature spell that last game.
Yeah. Now, do you think that since True Name Nemesis is getting more and more popular, that maybe Engineer Plague might get more and more popular, and Elves might kind of suffer that same punishment?
If Engineered Plague becomes popular, Elves weeps.
Yeah, it really does.
It has so few answers to the card, and the card is beyond good against the deck.
Yeah, I'm guessing Elves would just have to really rely on those Abrupt Decays from the sideboard.
The problem is that the Engineered Plague still resolves before you Abrupt Decay it, and that sometimes is just too much.
Yeah,
there.
You might lose a couple of important Elves, and you'll be too far behind to really make a comeback.
It's gonna 3 for, even if you have the Abrupt Decay in your hand, the Engineering Plague will probably 3 for 1 you.
Okay, all right, that's definitely fair. So Jim will be on the play once again. Game 1, he did mulligan. Hopefully this time he doesn't.
Yeah, I would really like to see. I like these on the play here. I think Aether Vial is pretty important in the matchup.
Okay.
Well, maybe that's not fair to say. I don't know if he ever has time to cast Aether Vial. What Aether Vial lets him do is if he has to have 1 land hand with Aether Vial, he can pitch all his cards to pyrokinesis things, and then he can eventually just vial in things, so he doesn't have to draw lands. He can use his spells his cards to do other things.
Yeah, maybe then he could rely on Port, maybe even Wasteland. Ben does have a decent amount of non-basic lands. He has Bayous, he has Taiga, he has 4 Gaia's Cradle. He doesn't have a Dryad Arbiter, so.
Port is one of the good cards in this matchup.
Yeah. All right. So Jim's leading off. What do you think he's going to fetch up here?
All right, Jim's going to go
Probably the plateau.
the plateau, it looks like. It doesn't, I don't know if it is particularly of consequence.
Yeah.
You know, the green mana doesn't matter. Ben doesn't play artifacts.
All right. So Jim's hand. I think I did see a pyrokinesis in his hand.
Well, that certainly would be a good reason to keep it. I think
Definitely.
if you have Pyrokinesis, red card, and lands, it's almost a keep just off that.
Okay. All right. So Jim's going to lead off with a Aether Vial and pass the turn.
Yeah, I really like this keep of his. It looks like it has the Pyrokinesis and the Aether Vial and other things to vial into. It's got the pieces to take down an elf deck.
Yeah, I think this was exactly what you were talking about before.
All right, so on Ben, we lead off on Wooded Foothills. He's going to go ahead and make Deathrite Shaman off that. Deathrite Shaman, probably the newest inclusion to the elf deck. That little 1/2 is actually an elf.
Yeah, the elf deck has been around for a while, ever since Prothor Berlin back in 2008. That's when it really became super popular, and it kind of transformed into Legacy, and now a lot of people are playing elves. Elves is definitely a deck for the combo player, and like you said, you could also go beatdown with it.
Yeah, it's got a really good backup plan.
Yeah, it really does.
All right, so back to Jim. He does have a Cavern of Souls, which will be, of course, naming Goblin. He has also appears to have boarded in Mindbreak Trap.
Yeah, that's something that we talked about before. Mindbreak Trap. Is it excellent in this matchup? Is it just pretty
No.
good?
I do not think it's excellent. The thing is that there are very few cards that Ben can play on turns 2 and 3, and Mindbreak Trap is one of them. Like, it will get something against elves sometimes,
Okay, that's
which
fair.
just probably makes it good enough to play.
Yeah, there's Mindbreak Trap. It says if your opponent casts 3 or more spells this turn, you're able to exile any number of target spells.
Yeah.
So once Ben's trying to go off, I guess Jim wants to have that for the key spell.
I think this card is less good against elves
Than, like, Storm.
than
But,
it used
yeah.
to be, because elves, now that it has the 4 cradles and the Crater Hoof plan, sometimes they just play an elf a turn, make a bunch of mana, and hit you. That's something the deck never used to do. It always used to kind of go through this engine. So sometimes he'll win without ever playing 3 spells in a turn.
Okay, yeah. And it's obviously, really shines against a deck like Storm.
Yep. So we're going to see Deathrite Shaman off the forest. We're going to see the other Shaman tap, removing Jim's fetch land to cast Quirion Ranger. Quirion Ranger can bounce a forest to untap a creature.
Okay. So
Only once.
So do you think Ben? Oh wow, there's the Guy's Cradle.
Yep, Guy's Cradle comes into play. He taps that. That'll be for 3 mana. 2 of it will go ahead to play Elvish Visionary, drawing a card. He would love to hit Symbiote here, which he already has.
Yeah, he already has it. Now, do you think Jim's gonna go for anything here, or what's Jim's line of play?
So he has a green mana, so he can play Symbiote, and you can use Symbiote to bounce Visionary, which he'll and untap a Deathrite Shaman. So now he's out of mana, playing Symbiote.
Okay.
There aren't 2 lands in the graveyard, so he can't get 2 mana off Deathrite Shaman.
So
Okay.
I think what Jim is gonna try to do here. What do you think Jim's thinking about?
Well, he's thinking about when to Pyrokinesis. Or maybe this is spell number. Is this spell? This is spell. Okay, we're in Mindbreak Trap territory,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, it is spell number 3. I think that's what he is thinking about, the Mindbreak
The
Trap.
bug is a great card to Mindbreak Trap,
Yeah,
because it also protects your creatures from removal.
Let's bring up Pyrokinesis one more time on the screen for everybody at home. We'll do that momentarily for you guys. There it is. So all he has to, it's essentially the red Force of Will.
Yeah, if you've played Flames of the Firebrand, this is way better. This is like Flames of the Firebrand on steroids. Yeah, it does 4 instead of 3, and you don't actually pay for it. You just pitch a red card.
So I think maybe in response to the Wirewood Symbiote, he might Pyrokinesis and then Mindbreak Trap.
That's certainly an option. So he has to leave one of the cards alive.
Yeah, I think he might just leave him with a Deathrite
Well, he's
Shaman?
going to start by putting Skirk Prospector into play and then cycling a Gem Palm Incinerator.
Okay, on the Quirion Ranger. So this
Yeah.
is pretty good.
So he's picking Quirion Ranger.
This is all in response to the Wirewood Symbiote, right?
It's all in response to the Wired Symbiote. The reason he can pick Ranger is that now if Ben tries to use the Ranger's ability, he can Pyrokinesis in response, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's what Ben is thinking about right now. And Jim still has the Mindbreak Track in his hand, and I also saw a Goblin War Chief in his hand as well.
Yeah.
So he's gonna have some pressure on the table.
All right, so Ben, now getting ready to use that ability of Quirion Ranger, he can bounce the forest to untap Deathrite Shaman if he wants. He's going to go ahead and do that.
All right, and I believe that Jim is
Yeah,
going to respond right
onto
here.
that.
Now, what do you think Jim's going to leave Ben with? Just a Deathrite Shaman, probably?
I think he needs to take out the Elvish Visionary. That's a must here. So because he has to take out the Visionary, he's going to have to leave a Deathrite Shaman alive.
Okay, that's definitely fair. And as you can see, both players are really taking their time, thinking about everything. They don't want to
Yeah.
make any mistakes here. They're both 4-1. They're not too far away from top 8.
Well, he has the Mind Break Trap, so he could leave Visionary. If he's leaving Visionary alive, he's going to be committed to countering the Symbiote. You don't want to leave Ben with this Visionary Symbiote engine.
Exactly. All right, so I think Jim's going to now... All right, so he's letting that go. He's going to draw. He draws a Scalding Tarn. I think he might... Well, he doesn't have
Yeah.
any action because he's going to have to get rid of that Goblin War Chief. But I think this is still fine. Maybe just take out both
If you-
Deathrite Shamans?
Get into top deck wars. Goblins is a slight favorite here because they have great card advantage, but not a huge favorite.
Yeah, exactly.
All
So
right.
we'll...
So where we are on the stack, to recap here, the Deathrite, the Goblin, the Gem Palm Incinerator killed the Quirion Ranger. So we're back with the Symbiote on the stack. Now the Symbiote's going to get Mind Break trapped.
yeah, I guess exiled.
Yes, and there is no mana floating.
And Ben is still in the tank here. He looks like he's just past the turn.
I don't know if Jim needs to Pyrokinesis right now.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't need to do it now. He can untap and draw,
Yeah, the reason...
get more information.
Yeah, you can get more information. The reason he may want to do it is that it makes the Gaia's Cradle a lot worse.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Alright.
definitely true.
All right.
Yeah,
Jim's draw for the turn was a second Aether Vial. So
yeah.
no help there.
Drawing multiple Aether Vials is definitely pretty bad, and playing against like an attrition-based deck and just having Aether Vial is normally pretty bad because if they deal with all your threats, you have nothing to put in play with the Aether Vial. So Aether Vial just kind of works as another mana source that you're not really doing too much with.
Right. You usually try to set up board states where then a top decked matron could be like matron and ringleader right away, right?
Exactly.
All right.
There's the Scalding Tarn from Jim. And he's going to do Pyrokinesis and taking out both Deathrite Shamans.
All right. So that's good here. Now Jim is left with no cards. This is the difficulty, is that I think Jim is still an underdog right now.
I would have to agree with you. I think Ben is, not happy about this, but it's not the end of the world. It was only a 2-for-2.
Right. And so Ben is left with an Elvish Visionary in play and a Gaia's Cradle in play. He does have a forest in hand that we know about, and actually has an additional land.
Yes.
He has a Green Sun Zenith.
Yeah, I mean, his hand is pretty good.
Yeah.
Ben is fine here.
Right.
Oh, Natural
See,
Order.
Natural Order drawn, so Ben can Natural Order for a Progenitus on this board. That's very strong.
Yes. So we'll see what he decides to do here.
He may just Green Sun Zenith for a Llanowar Elf or for something small.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll see what happens here.
Right.
So he's searching.
Yeah, he caches in Verdant Catacombs for the Dryad Arbor. That does produce land, just like any other thing would, because it's an extra creature for Gaia's Cradle.
Yep. And there he's gonna do a Green Sun Zenith. So he's still shuffling. So he's gonna save some time here.
I'm guessing he can get Symbiote or Llanowar Elf series.
Yeah, I think Symbiote's probably a bit better here.
They're both pretty good. Symbiote's the safer play for sure.
Yeah. And Jim with just no hand right now. So Ben will crash in for 1. And Ben's setting up for a really nice next turn.
Yes, next turn he has 4 mana. That Cradle taps for 3. The Arbor taps for 1.
Yeah, so Jim has basically 1 turn to draw something. Otherwise, Ben's just going to really go out and just pretty much do whatever he wants.
And this showcases, I think, why it's a really difficult matchup. So you're saying Jim has 1 turn to draw something. And remember, he has already drawn Mind Break Trap, Pyrokinesis, Gem Palm Incinerator. Like, that's a lot of action against an elf deck.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. I mean, the elf deck is good.
Yeah, So I always like to compliment Goblins because I think it's one of the best card advantage decks in Legacy, which is peculiar because it's a mono red deck.
Because of Goblin Pile Driver
Ringleader.
Goblin Ringleader, yes.
The Matron Ringleader engine is so powerful.
Yep.
Elves is one of the decks that I think competes with Goblins for powerful card advantage engines.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so Jim needs a good draw here. Let's see what he draws.
Draws a Mind Break
Trap. I don't think that's going to be that great here.
No, it's not going to counter the Natural Order plan. Jim's having a problem that he has no clock on the board.
I know, yeah, just nothing at all.
Yeah.
I mean, Ben still has 17 life.
Ben at 17 life, Jim has no clock. If you give Elves enough turns, they're going to kill you.
Yeah, exactly. All right, there's a Skirk Prospector will come in for 1. Ben will, gladly take it here. And Ben. Let's see how Ben plays his turn. As long as he, doesn't play at the Mindbreak track, which I don't think he will, he'll be pretty good.
Yeah, Ben will start out by fetching. He's drawn a fair number of lands. Remember, Alpha is one of the more land-light decks in Legacy.
Oh, really?
It only plays 20.
Yep. And a lot of the lands are just, the sack lands.
Yes, it overloads on fetch lands really hard.
It does.
It plays 2 Forest, 2 Dryad Arbor, a Bayou, and a Taiga. It plays 7 lands and 8 ways to fetch them.
Yep, exactly. All right, so there's the Crater Hoof.
It's in a natural order.
And Jim has no answer, and I
Crater Hoof
think
would
that's
actually be
lethal. Yeah, that's 16. Yeah, that's way lethal. All right, so
All right.
just like that, Jim's out of the tournament, and Ben moves on to 5-1.
Yep.
I think Jim thinks maybe, by the look of his face, is this really that bad of a matchup?
It's not good.
It's not good? Okay.
I mean,